which is that fear there's survival value in that fear, right? That's a
Mhm.
survival response.
Oh,
So when
absolutely.
you have the fight or flight, it's your brain saying, hey, don't go do that because last time you did that, it didn't turn out very well. So let's not do that again. So stay
Mm,
away from that,
mm,
right? And then programs, more cognitive programs with different brain areas. There's emotion, there's beliefs. All these things start to
mm,
form around that fear,
mm,
right? So no, I can't go do that because I'm not good enough, or because I'm just going to fail, or
mm,
because these kinds of people don't like me, and so I can't do that because they're
mm,
it's not going to go well. And if you come up with all of these weird, and your brain will make stuff up.
mm.
It makes stuff up all the time. We're making up content all the time that's not real.
Hi, guys. Welcome back to Neff Inspiration, a show on YouTube and as a podcast with me, your host, Stefan Neff. I have got Amy Rosner with me today, and I was looking forward to this interview for quite some time because Amy and I share a passion for neuroplasticity, a passion for knowing about the newest, coolest research about how our brain really works, what drives us to behave in certain ways, to how we cope with our environment. And Amy is a master in hypnotherapy. She has equally gone deep, deep, deep down there and has found ways how we can bypass the ego, how we can bypass those kind of things that are sort of constantly standing in our way. Now, some of you think hypnotherapy, oh, what a mumbo jumbo. And we will today surprise you. We will today prove to you how impactful hypnotherapy can be. What's the difference between stage hypnosis and really us allowing your body to come up with the right answers, with the right treatment options, with the right way of healing? So, can't wait to talk. Amy, welcome to my show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful to be here.
Aw, Amy, we could take this interview anywhere. We already decided, but it's the neuroplasticity that is, I guess, the beautiful new insights that we can create. The fact that we can actually rewrite our stories, and that is so powerful. But many people don't even know what neuroplasticity is. How do you define it?
Actually, there are probably a half a dozen different kinds of neuroplasticity. So it's
Mm,
it's it's not just a thing. It's a group of things, and just the way the brain naturally operates on several different levels.
mm,
And so there's everyday neuroplasticity, which is what I'm particularly interested in, which is what's happening with us throughout the day. We're constantly rewriting our life stories all throughout the day.
mm,
We just don't realize we're doing it. So when someone hears you can rewrite your life story, they think, wow, how do you do that? It's like, you've been doing it your whole life. You just don't realize that's what you're doing. So, we bring a memory up and we're having to reconstruct it.
mm,
And it's not like bringing up a picture on your computer. It's the same every time. Memory is not the same every time. And
mm,
the same is true for other concepts as well. For example, emotion. Great new research showing that what we used to think of as having, primary, secondary, and even tertiary emotions, various cultures we all have basically the same ones. Actually, the new research is showing, well, not so much. It's really more of a constructed process, just like memories are. And then we reconstruct them as we go through life, with the experiences that we have. So that's just the way that the brain works, and that's a form of neuroplasticity, where the connections in your brain are constantly changing
mm.
in response to your experiences internally and externally. Yeah.
Beautifully said. Because that then, of course, will illuminate the multitude of factors that can impact this process of constant relearning, of constant re-feeling, and the change within those things that we thought were static in the past. Start that from stress, the impact of hormones such as cortisol, take the impact of nutrition, hydration, sleep, all those kind of things are impacting the way we feel. And everyone out there will have experienced that. So it is amazing to actually shine that light on it. And I'm so glad that we now have research to back that up. What has been some of the biggest breakthroughs in the recent year in 2024? Many of us felt 2024 was a heap of beep that brought a lot of challenges, brought a lot of trauma, brought a lot of division within the United States. Were they positive? What were the highlights as far as the psychology and your understanding of neuroplasticity was concerned?
I actually did a lot of research to publish a book. My book came out last December, and it's about rewriting your life stories and about everyday neuroplasticity. And so I was actually pretty stunned at what I found when I was researching because I knew there was a lot of really good research on hypnotherapy these days. I just didn't realize how much because I hadn't really checked in a while. And so that made me, really get up on it. And almost all of the references in my book is written for everybody to be able to read and get something out of. It does go into the weeds on the brain stuff quite a bit, but it's able to be, comprehended by people who don't have an education in neuroscience. And almost all of my references were review studies. That's how much research is out there now.
Wow.
So I was extremely happy to see that because the book is all about putting together my background as a neuroscientist as well as my background as a hypnotherapist and kind of marrying those two and seeing, okay, what are we actually doing in hypnotherapy when it comes to the brain? What's happening in the brain? What changes are we enabling somebody to make using these brain hacks?
Beautiful. Beautiful. How would you describe the process of hypnotherapy, what it really is for a new patient who is actually quite skeptical and thinks,
I get
mumbo
a lot
jumbo?
of those. With my science background, I get a lot of people who tend to be skeptical of this stuff. They'll choose me over other practitioners that do energy healing and stuff like that just because it's like, more, they resonate more. And so it's kind of nice because I get to really talk about what this is, what's going on in the brain when we're doing this. Almost the last estimate I saw was over 98% of brain activity is subconscious.
Wow.
So, that subconscious is going to win every time over
Mm,
the willpower and discipline and those sorts of things that you try to force upon yourself consciously, right? And so, almost everything we know about the brain, we're talking about subconscious, but all,
mm,
all brain processes are subconscious.
mm,
The conscious mind only gets a little bit of the results of those processes.
mm,
The exception of maybe a little bit of voluntary motor,
mm,
but yeah, all the processes are
mm,
subconscious. So when we talk about subconscious processes to, affect the information that's down there in the depths that we're not aware of on a day-to-day basis, it just makes sense that that would be the direction that we would have to go to make some big changes. Because if we try to make changes in the less than 2%, I mean, what's that going to buy us? Not so
exactly.
much, right?
Well, I often quote the 80,000, 60 to 80,000 thoughts that we have each day, and that about 80% of them are negative. So that there's constant these voices in our head that are actually telling us what a heap of shit we are, what a failure, that you're not lovable, that you're fat, that you are not worthy to be here, things like that.
I
It's
call
actually
that voice a babbler. It's just babbling at you all day, right? And actually, the fact that the vast majority of our thoughts and feelings that we have are negative, it seems like it would be we got a bit raw deal, when you on first inspection. But when you really think about it, if all of our thoughts and feelings were positive, where's the survival value in that? There's not, your brain is not pointing anything out to you to say, hey, if you change that, you can have a better life, right? So I think a perspective shift may be in order for some of us, if not all of us, on what negative thoughts and feelings really are. And to me, they're opportunities. Your brain is giving you an opportunity. Your brain is trying to protect you all the time. And so it's giving you opportunities to change. And that's why we
Hmm.
have negative emotions. So, you get angry about something. What is that? Is that just to make you uh, go out of control
Mm.
because now your brain is in that fight or flight, and it's not thinking very well. It's on automatic pilot, right? It's in emotional mode. That's not helpful, right? I mean, there's got to be something about getting really angry that's helpful. And what is that? It's your brain saying in no
Ah,
uncertain terms, this is not okay. That this is not okay for us as a holistic human being, and you need to change something.
I often say that emotions, especially negative emotions, are messengers. But I've previously more considered them to be messengers that maybe I'm not looking after myself, that I'm not doing the right thing. I've never looked at it from a survival of the fittest point of view. And it actually makes a hell of a lot of sense. And just taking it out of context, this statement, or saying within that context, I actually like the idea. Now, having been a man who has gone through a lot of trauma, probably also in my childhood that I can't remember, I have got not the greatest at coping mechanisms, and my fear avoidance is strong. Now, fear in its own right is there. And now here I am, having more of that served every single day. What's the positive thing in that to me? So for the species, it's quite nice that we have got this warning mechanisms, but those people, the 50% out there who have not such great patterns of relationship patterns, for us, that's a double raw deal, isn't it?
Yeah. And so there's another side to this, which is that fear there's survival value in that fear, right? That's a
Mm.
survival response.
Oh,
So when
absolutely.
you have the fight or flight, it's your brain saying, hey, don't go do that because last time you did that, it didn't turn out very well. So let's not do that again. So stay
Mm,
away from that,
mm,
right? And then programs, more cognitive programs with different brain areas. There's emotion, there's beliefs. All these things start to
mm,
form around that fear,
mm,
right? So no, I can't go do that because I'm not good enough, or because I'm just going to fail, or
mm,
because these kinds of people don't like me, and so I can't do that because they're
mm,
it's not going to go well. And you come up with all of these weird, and your brain will make stuff up.
mm,
It makes stuff up all the time. We're making up content all the time that's not real. And you know this every day. We're doing it 24/7. Just with your eyes open, there are two blind spots about here and here in your visual field where there is no information coming into your head, right? But we never see little black spots here because we make it up. We're making up content all the time to tell
Beautifully
ourselves,
said.
and
Beautifully
and we
said.
believe it. For the most part, we tend to believe it. Especially, and every politician knows you say the same thing over and over again, and
Oh
people
yeah.
will believe it, right? Repetition is your best friend for putting something into your head and keeping it there. And so a lot of times, those limiting beliefs and the
Uh,
fight or flight responses and things like that we have, to not go do something or to do something else, because we're afraid, even if we don't feel it is fear. Some people are kind of in denial that there's fear involved in some of these kind of processes, but you know, it's a way of keeping us safe, and then our brain just takes off with it.
mm,
And we form these beliefs that now are going to impact the rest of our lives
mm,
too. So something that we have this fear of that starts as a survival response, having to do with our home life, for example, something in the home, then will generalize to our workspace. It'll
mm,
generalize to our
mm,
relationships. It'll generalize to
mm,
everything else
mm,
eventually. And as fears do,
mm,
all fears will do that. You have a fear of heights, and that will evolve into a fear of flying, and it will,
mm,
become a fear of open spaces, and it'll keep going until you do something about it.
mm,
So a lot of people wind up with a whole bunch of fears because of all this generalization. So
mm,
our head can take something that maybe would have been just a kind of basic survival response. Hey, don't touch that hot burner again because
mm,
that's not going to go well, right?
mm,
Graduate from that to, oh, now you can't have what you want in your life because you're not good enough and you don't deserve it, and all these other kind of sweeping beliefs
mm,
that it becomes an onion with all these different
mm,
layers,
mm.
right?
I love the way you explained that, and that is again, it makes a lot of sense. Yet we see also how resistant our body can be. Our, when I say our body, our mind, our wherever these emotions are created. Nowadays, we are no longer so sure if it's really only the brain or if there are not other neural networks. The importance of the fascia in our body when you actually look at the release of emotions, the release of trauma, etc. So it's actually quite intriguing. It's far more complex, but I love the way that you break it down into a simple pattern. Now, if we were to look at things that we can do when we are engulfed over those engulfed with these fears, when we try to change behavior, we have got the example of special forces, which train really always outside of their comfort zone. So you've got this fear inoculation. So you have got men who are exposing themselves to those fears, and they become masters in dealing with this fear.
Yeah.
Yet, I've had quite a number of men on my show and met in my life whose life, where that particular part of their life came to an abrupt end, typically with the facing a machine gun or an IED or something like that. And then suddenly, thereafter, despite of all this intense training with fear, to deal with fear, they were falling back onto those old fear avoidance, for example. They were running a mile, their escape mechanisms of drinking, drugging, etc., and ultimately, unfortunately, taking their lives in many cases. They are brutally strong. So where does
Yeah.
that fit? On the one hand, you have got this masterclass of fear for
Mhm.
8 years, 12 years, however long they are deployed or and in training. And then thereafter, they are just as vulnerable to the fear as they were beforehand. Is that not
Yeah.
speaking against you?
No. In fact, I mean, a fear response is a fear response. And you don't get inoculated to a fear response. You can manage a fear response better
Right.
in particular circumstances. So if you are afraid of something in particular, then, we all know, and psychologists have known this for a long, long time, if you try to avoid the fear or get away from it, it's going to get worse.
Mm,
And so, psychotherapy techniques such as systematic desensitization, that sort of
mm,
thing, will help somebody spend more and more time in that situation that produced the fear
mm,
until they can actually stay in that situation. And it's
mm,
like your brain is saying, "Oh wait, you don't get in that situation." Like driving on a highway, for example, if your brain is telling you, "Oh no, we can't drive on this freeway here because we're going to die," and so you
mm,
take the back roads instead because you're afraid of getting on the freeway, and then
mm,
you start making yourself go on the freeway for a little bit. Then your brain's like, "Wait, we're going to die, we're going to die." Okay, any minute now, we're going to die. Okay, you get off in the next exit because we're going to die if you don't get off the next exit. And so eventually you can spend more and more time on that freeway, and your brain's going, okay, wait a minute, we're not dying. We've been
mm,
on here for quite a
mm.
while and we're not dying. So
Yeah.
maybe it's not that big a deal, right? And so that's kind of, what you would call inoculation of a fear. But if you're in another situation, if you're in a dangerous situation in some other place, you're not going to have any problem with a fear response. That's going to be there loud and clear, right?
And
So because that's
it
a
must
survival
be
thing.
because
Yes,
exactly, it's
exactly.
so deeply
Yeah,
ingrained. It's the
yeah,
survival.
yeah.
Exactly. No, that makes a lot of sense when you look at it from that point of view, because otherwise you would suddenly expose yourself to situations where maybe your chances of not getting out would not be so great.
Right, exactly.
No, a
Yeah.
very good point actually. To have this developmental as a species, the development and ingrainment of fear as a crucial survival mechanism. Okay,
Mhm.
makes sense.
Well, those
So
of us who are still alive on this planet have that survival response,
true,
right?
true, true, true.
So there's that.
As an anesthetist, I've often told my 10% of patients who have got needle phobia that they are actually super survivors because their ancestors actually figured out, hey, if you don't get stabbed, you live longer. So from that angle, there's
There
some
you
very
go.
positive things to phobias there. And typically, I got a chuckle out of people, and then
Right.
we were able to manage it in a better way.
I get a lot of those people coming in as clients. Oh, I have to go to the doctor and get a shot, and I can't go. Yeah.
No, it's beautiful. Well, so if we are now saying, okay, there are actually ways nowadays, or they have always been. I mean, hypnosis has been around for what, 2 decades?
Oh,
The, f-
thousands of years.
as
Thousands of years.
when you think at trance and
Ancient
religious things,
civilizations,
right?
the priests in ancient civilizations
Yeah,
have
yeah,
done the
and
same, very similar
yeah,
kinds of brain hacks that we do
yeah.
today with modern hypnotherapy.
Sorry, I said decades. I meant centuries. I think in the Western
Millennia,
world, yeah, true,
right?
true. That is probably true
Yeah,
as far as the fact is concerned.
yeah.
I thought the first kind of more or less documented hypnotherapy and self-hypnosis was about 2 centuries ago. But since then, it has been
Right.
practiced without us understanding the brain. So, and has been effective in many cases. Often enough, also being used to on stage hypnosis. And probably
Mhm.
that is still an image that we are fighting nowadays. What is the difference between stage hypnosis and you helping someone to truly overcoming hurdles in their life, obstacles that repeatedly have set them back?
So there are a lot of similarities, but there are some differences. The hypnosis that you see on stage is actual hypnosis, and hypnosis is hypnosis. I mean, it's to me, it's a switching of cerebral dominance over to this, right hemisphere parallel processing and more integrative brain activity. And once you start moving in that direction, once that switch happens, then you're in a hypnotic state for all
Mm,
intents and purposes.
mm,
And so you can make some changes very easily in what you're thinking and feeling and your behavior
mm,
when you're in that state. Whereas when you're not, it's really hard to change anything. You're trying to use things like willpower and discipline,
mm, mm,
and you're trying to change. As soon as you start trying, it's going to be a problem because
mm,
you're gonna have only so much buy-in from the rest of your brain to do that,
mm,
and that's going to go south pretty quickly. So
mm,
with stage hypnosis, what they're doing, and one of my instructors at my hypnotherapy academy had a show in Las Vegas for a while. He was from Europe, and he's an amazing practitioner. But it was fun to listen to what he had to say about doing this on stage. And he'd come in and do card tricks and stuff. It was pretty cool. But it really is hypnosis that they're doing. They're taking people aside at the beginning, and they're seeing who is what we would call suggestible, right? Now, that's kind of a notion that I have a love-hate relationship with, but because all hypnosis is technically self-hypnosis. We are hypnotizing ourselves all throughout the day. We just don't realize it. So to go to sleep, we have to go into a hypnagogic state, for example. To wake up, we have to go into a hypnopompic state. So everybody, technically speaking, is hypnotizing themselves at least twice a day, right? They just don't see it that way. And when you're really into a task and someone's talking to you and you don't hear them, they're right next to you, you don't hear them, you're in a hypnotic state. Highway hypnosis, so you get to work really quickly, you don't realize that you're there already, you don't remember
mm.
the trip. That's a hypnotic state. So
Yeah.
we're constantly in that state. So it's a very natural state. Your brain will immediately put you in that state in many circumstances, just being really confused or overwhelmed or bored or a multitude of situations, your brain will automatically put you in a hypnotic state. So it's easy for anybody who wants to go into that state to go into it.
Mm,
There are big individual differences, though, about going into hypnosis on demand, like in a hypnotherapist's office or on stage. And so if somebody is inclined to go into that state, the way that we tend to think of it is someone else is controlling our brain, but really that's not happening. We're getting more control of our brain. We're just putting it over to that side that isn't talking to us, where that babbler doesn't reside, and it's not like, yapping at us all the time. And so that's a kind of a foreign state for a lot of us to be in, from minute to minute, hour to hour. We try to be more in that controlling state, or what we
Mm,
feel is control. I see it as illusory control, because
mm,
we feel like we're in control, but we're not. And so when you're looking for someone to be a subject on stage, you're looking for people who are already in that mindset of, oh yeah, I want to do this.
right.
And so they'll take people in the back and they'll put them through just a really basic short series of suggestions, and see who actually follows the suggestions and
Mm,
who
mm,
doesn't. And so the people that will go into hypnosis pretty much immediately in the back will be the ones that they bring up, and everybody goes back to their seats, and then they call the ones back who have been in that state very quickly
Yes.
and easily. So that's the first thing. Not everyone who comes into a hypnotherapist's office will be in that mindset,
Mm,
although, some of them will, quite a few of them will be. And then there are some sleight of hand things that some of those stage guys do. I was learning some of this stuff from a guy who's been doing this for a long time, and he was talking about, when you do this, tap right over here on their side, and then they're going to make a certain movement, and it's going to look like, something happened, that like they just remembered something or something like that. And so there is a little sleight of hand that goes on with the stage shows, but they really are doing hypnosis. Hypnosis is such an easy thing to do.
mm,
Any kid can do it. In fact, one of the people I went to the Hypnotherapy Academy with many years ago decided as a kid he wanted to be a hypnotherapist because he found a book on hypnotherapy, and he chose one of the exercises in the book, and he ran his sister through it, his little sister, and it worked. And it was just some suggestion of, when I do this, you say this, and when I hold up my hand, you say this word or something like that. And it worked. And he thought it was the coolest thing ever. And he did wind up becoming a hypnotherapist. So it's extremely easy to do, although the brain hacks that we use are extremely easy to do. And so on stage, it's a very easy thing. It's much easier
mm,
than people might suspect.
mm.
But man, if you got me up on stage in one of those shows, I wouldn't be doing anything. Like I wouldn't, because I'm just not, I've been trying to go through life anonymously pretty much. So I'm just not the kind of person that would want to be in one of those shows. So I would not be a good subject.
Very, very good. Very, very good. And I love the way you described it. Certainly, as far as I'm concerned, I certainly tell people that there is no way that I can make you do anything that you don't want to do.
Right.
So I think this is really, really important that people understand that. Having said that, I am a very skeptical and cynical man deep inside. So I know that we can, whatever we choose to improve us humans, we can also use in nefarious ways. Is it possible to make someone do something that they then don't recall? Has the CIA got a secret program, or the FSB, or any kind of alphabet soup of people that you don't want to meet in a dark alleyway? Have there been attempts? The answer is yes. Do you know more about those attempts to use mind control really in a different way?
Yeah. For decades.
Mm,
Yeah. There's been a lot. Concerning the CIA, absolutely a lot. Um, I'm sure that every country that has a similar kind of organization has done
mm,
similar kinds of studies.
mm,
But mind control and hypnotherapy are not the same thing.
mm,
Hypnosis can be used, and I think is probably almost always used, unless you're talking more, drug-based sorts of
mm, mm,
interventions. But hypnosis is always going to be a part of it. But that's not the critical part. It's just being in a hypnotic state is not going to allow suggestions to be implanted into your head that you don't like.
mm,
It just doesn't work that way.
mm,
So there has to be some kind of um, serious, trauma going on at the time. There has to be some brainwashing, some
Mm,
really uncomfortable stuff going on,
mm,
sleep deprivation, torture of some kind in order for these, brain programs to start running that are, in my opinion, even maladaptive brain programming is done for the good of the organism. So your
mm,
brain is protecting you all the time.
mm,
And if a program is formed that seems to be maladaptive in some way, and we see a lot of this with people who have childhood trauma,
mm.
and they try to, get away from that trauma or deal with the trauma
Yeah.
with this programming. And your brain is not fully developed until you're into your 30s.
Mm,
So you get this half-baked little brain that's trying its best, to handle a really horrible situation, and it comes up with something that's not going to be the most elegant solution,
mm,
but it's going to be helpful in the moment.
mm,
It's going to feel like the right thing to do at the time.
mm,
And that programming, because it's survival based, is going to stick around.
mm,
And so whether you're, 40 and a CIA subject, or you're, 5 and being molested by your uncle, you're in a situation in which you're going to be forming some maladaptive
mm,
programs
mm,
in order to get through this very difficult
mm,
time. And then those are not going to, they're going to serve you in the moment, but they're not going to serve you later. And that's the kind of programming that people like me help other people get rid of, is those programs that have come up for some really good survival based reason, and they may have served you at one time, but
mm.
they're not serving you anymore, and they've got to go.
Beautiful, beautiful answer. Very well delineated. And I think, yes, there will always be negative forces, really insidious attempts to change behaviors. And when I say there will be, they are constantly out there. And it's called marketing. Because when we look at the various techniques that we learn in hypnosis and that we utilize to change people's mind, when you then just switch on the telly or listen to a politician speak, it makes you cringe the more
Right,
you learn about hypnosis,
right,
because ultimately the same kind of techniques you will find out there. And yes, sometimes you think, oh, come on, it can't be this obvious. You've just learned a new technique in hypnotherapy, the use of Ericksonian language or whatever it is. And then suddenly
right,
you listen to someone and think, come on. But it works.
right.
It works. These are
It
gazillion dollar
does.
industries which are using essentially hypnotherapy techniques to make you either buy something or typically act in some way in the sense of politicians to actually vote for them. Yeah, so it is we are exposed to it all the time, and yet we have no clue
We
about
are,
it.
but now thankfully, it's not that easy. Because otherwise we'd be buying all kinds of shit we don't need, right? Like we'd
Which
have
so
a
many
house
people
full of stuff
do.
we don't.
Which,
So
come on, look at it.
yeah, right, yes, and that's a bigger issue. But you need a lot more than that. And even Erickson, Milton Erickson, one of the fathers of modern hypnotherapy, he will be the first to say, you're gonna not just doing this to someone who is not already bought in, just using his techniques in conversational hypnotherapy, if you will, is not enough to change that person's programming about something. There has to be you have to use what do you call fractionation to get people, more and more into a hypnotic state over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So that, in which we do, and you can do in conversation, just ask somebody, how you feeling today? Or, what did you do last night? Something self-referential, right? Something emotional. Where would you like to see yourself in your business in a year?
Mm.
That's that, you go right into a hypnotic state, so I don't know, ask somebody 7 questions like that or something like that.
Yeah.
And then, they're right there where they can be, more, suggestible, if you will, if they're so inclined. But if they're not already bought in, even that isn't enough. You get them in that hypnotic state, and then you start this Ericksonian dialogue, and messing stuff around, making stuff confusing, ambiguous, and then they start filling in. But the thing of it is, the clients do the filling in
Uh,
on a lot of that, and so they're going to fill things in based on their worldview, their values, what they have already programmed in their head.
mm,
And so not everybody is influenced the same way by the same politicians using the same words and giving the same speech. 10 people can watch somebody's speech and get 10 different things out of it,
mm,
have 10 different viewpoints about it. So it depends where you're coming from to begin with, in large part. And then all those, and anybody who's tried to do marketing for their own business can tell you it's not that easy, unfortunately. As it would be really great if it was, but
okay. That's it. That's a
but
very
it's
valid
not.
argument. A
So
very good
yeah.
point, isn't it? Sugar. Okay. Oh dear. Okay, fair call.
But
So,
you can use some of those techniques, some of those little brain hacks, a lot of NLP stuff, which
mm,
came out of Ericksonian hypnosis, actually.
mm,
And those little brain hacks, you can get people kind of more on that, on your train, if you will, by using those kinds of brain
mm,
hacks. But it's not a guarantee.
mm,
They're not necessarily going to go there because it's not up to you. There are little influences that you're trying to, kind of push their way, but it comes down to a lot more than that. So
beautiful.
yeah.
But then again, at the one hand, we are sort of arguing against the supreme power of hypnosis, the supreme power of making you change your mind. Yet on the other side, we actually see such fundamental changes when hypnotic techniques are used in the right setting by the right people for the right reason in the right person.
And it comes
And
down to whether that person wants the change or not. That's
Touché.
why if these brain hacks are used on somebody who wants to make a change and they're in the direction of that change, they are extremely powerful and extremely fast because they're
mm,
tapping in to that neuroplasticity, that way that brain actually works to rewrite and
mm,
reprogram. But if they don't buy in immediately, that's not something they want,
mm,
no amount of hypnotherapy is going to make them want that. So if someone comes in to try to quit smoking, for example, which
mm,
is a really easy thing to do, it's a one session deal usually, then and I say, well, why do you want to stop smoking? They say, because it drives my wife crazy. Okay, so what on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it to you to stop smoking right now?
mm,
Well, I mean, I don't want her. No, just for you, not her, just for you. How much do you want to stop smoking right now? 3. Okay, so go home and, enjoy your cigars and stuff. And when you're ready, then come back and we can talk. Because
ah,
I can't make you want to stop smoking. Your wife can't make you want to stop smoking. If you really do want to stop, there are some things that we can do to make it easier for you to do that. But you're the one making that change, not me. I'm like your Sherpa. I've got your packs on my llama and I've got the map, right? And I don't have room to carry you too. You have to hike and you have to tell me where to go. And if you don't want to go there and you don't go, then I can't make you go,
very
right?
nice. Very nice. Okay, I like that. What are sort of you've pointed to some of the well-known, better-known indications for hypnotherapy, the smoking cessation, some of the phobias, but there is actually it's such a wide spread where we can massively influence the future path of a client or patient, however you look at it. I certainly had suffered from a lot of PTSD or a lot of physical symptoms and emotional distress from PTSD without actually knowing much about it. In reality, my conscious brain had created this abstract around it to actually make it all positive. Look, I'm a doctor here. You will not catch me out because I'm so switched on. But I was switched on all the time, and then in the night time needed alcohol to switch off, so to speak. Um, so, and I was lucky enough to have been exposed to hypnotherapy, and it was the most beautiful reduction of my symptoms within a short period of time.
Yeah.
How much have you come across that? And obviously, I wanted to get rid of my PTSD symptoms, so
Right.
I'm falling exactly into that category there. Um, that is, I mean, how, what are examples out there that maybe would surprise my audience to hear the effectiveness of hypnosis?
There, you're absolutely right. And I work a lot with medical personnel, and sometimes I'll have like a doctor come in and because he can't stop eating ice cream at night. This is an actual client. And so we deal with the ice cream stuff, but then we dig up, hey, there's something from your past, a traumatic experience that is still impacting you today. Even though it happened 40 years ago, you're
Mm,
still getting a negative feeling when you think about it. That shouldn't happen. That programming needs to go. How about we get rid of that? And then he notices that it's not just having to eat ice cream at night that's
mm,
better. Everything is better. And he's feeling more calm and he's sleeping better.
mm,
And he told me, he said, I didn't realize that there was this depth of application of these processes. And so that it does surprise most people.
mm,
And actually, what I specialize in is the deeper stuff. So if somebody wants to quit smoking, I send them to somebody else. But if somebody wants to, stop, choosing the wrong partner over and over again, and or feeling like they are PTSD, for example, anything trauma related that's been around for years or decades. Let's try to find the causes behind what's going on now and what's holding you back, and give you that freedom from that
mm,
old
mm,
programming so that
mm,
you can move forward in
mm,
an unobstructed way.
mm,
And that's really it's called analytical hypnotherapy, going back and looking for the causes of maladaptive programming. And I do that all the time. So, for example, there's someone who has been working with me for about 10 years, and every month, without fail, for 10 years, she's had a session with me. And it started out where she was thinking she was going to get fired from her job because she couldn't remember anything. When her manager would ask her about things, she would forget the answers. And she was told she'd never become a manager. And she just really felt her entire life she had traumatic experiences throughout her entire life, from birth until the time that I met her. She was
mm,
still in a bad relationship, an abusive relationship. And so, uh, there were a lot of things that were deeper issues than just I have a hard time remembering things when I need to. To me, that's just a sign that you've got a lot of stress, and it's turning off that accessibility in your head for whatever information you need.
mm,
Let's figure out where the stress is coming from, and
mm,
then let's make a lot of things better, right?
mm,
So over the years, we've taken things like, being abused by her father many years ago, being abused by her siblings, being abused by the partners that she's chosen, and in some pretty horrific ways, and go back and reprogram those events in the moment in our session, where at the beginning, okay, tell me your story of when your husband was dragging you behind the truck and then raped you, right? Tell me that story, but go slowly, and let me pause you every so often, and I want to keep her stress level in a window so that she's not dysregulating. And let's, you want to talk about it, let's talk. But if you don't mind, I'm going to pause you every so often just to make sure that your stress level isn't getting out of control. And I want you to be very detailed, because what happens with a traumatic event when someone is trying to or being forced to talk about it, they're going to slide past the worst parts, right? You're going to detail me those worst parts, and I want to hear those. And then when that arousal level starts shooting up, okay, now just open your eyes and look at me, and let's let that arousal
mm,
level come back down. And I use very simple processes, things having to do with cognitive dissonance, for example. If someone feels unsafe because they're bringing up a traumatic memory,
mm,
I can just have them look around the room and ask them, are you safe right now?
mm.
Yeah,
Nice.
you're here talking to me. Are you safe? Yes. But you feel unsafe? Yes. So that
Mm,
feeling doesn't make any sense right now, right? No, it made sense back in the day, but it's not making sense now, right? Right, right. Okay, how does it feel now? Okay, well, it feels better, And so I want them to pay attention to those responses.
Mm,
A lot of hypnotherapy has to do with body sensations because that's how the real you is talking to you,
mm,
not in words. It's not that babbler. That's survival mechanisms. It's making shit up, trying to make things, feel better so you can make sense so that you can go on to the next day. But if you get rid of that babbler and you pay attention to images and emotions and body sensations, that's when you're going to really understand how you feel about things
mm,
and what needs to change. And so when a body response is coming up, a negative body response, okay, instead of like we tend to do with fear, let's get away from that. Don't try to get away from it. Don't push it away. Let yourself feel that and just breathe and look at me. You know you're safe here, right? Yeah, but I can't breathe. Okay, put your hand here. Is there anything sitting on your chest that's keeping you from breathing? No. So is there any reason why you should have trouble breathing right now? No. Okay, take a nice deep breath, breathe, you know,
yeah.
make whatever movements you want. It just feel comfortable and tell me how that's feeling now. And that sensation goes away. If
Mm,
we do something along these lines, and this is just something that I came up with from several influences that I've had, and you do this kind of thing, and there's more to it, but you do this kind of thing and let them go through that story in a slow way, then at the end of it, and this is what, 15, 20 minutes later, okay, now go back to the beginning of this story where we started and tell me if it feels different now.
nice.
And it's amazing because what hypnotherapy does is it works with a sense that most of us don't even know we have called interoception.
Mm,
And that is arousal. There are two parts to it, arousal and affect. And so arousal is obviously how stressed you are, right? And so if you're high arousal, we tend to want to bring it down. So hypnosis is really good for helping people bring that stress response down,
mm,
or that physiological arousal level down. And then with affect, we want to move from negative. So any kind of negative feeling, generally negative, it could be anger, it could be sadness, it could be anything, but just
mm,
negative, um, to neutral or sometimes even positive. In this particular example, this client went from negative to positive in such a horrific situation. After 15 minutes of talking to me about it, now we go back and we go to the beginning of it again when she's being dragged behind the truck. And I say, how is this feeling now? And she's smiling. And she says, I feel empowered. This is the most amazing thing. And that's a true
wow.
story. And I was even surprised because usually we hit neutral, but not always positive. But that is an example of the immense change that you can make in a single program. And it's not just necessarily the one memory.
Mm,
All of the other memories you have that are connected to that are associated with that in your brain, are all going to be impacted in the same way. So if somebody is having some traumatic response to one thing, but it's happened many times with many people, all of
mm,
those situations are going to feel better because of
mm,
that one session on that one episode.
mm, mm,
So
mm,
when you think about if you can change something like that, and I'm not doing it, she's doing it.
mm,
I'm just facilitating it. I'm allowing her brain, giving her brain a support, if you
mm,
will, to be able to do this and to use that natural neuroplasticity to change what that
mm,
programming is.
mm,
And she wants it to happen, and it's happening because she's making it happen
mm,
with my help. So then she can ask herself, hey, well, I didn't think I'd ever be able to get past that. And now I just feel like, stronger because of it. So if
mm,
I can do that, then what else can I do? Like I can do this and I can do this. And now the world kind of starts opening up,
mm.
right? You're the side effects of this kind of intervention are things like, increased self-empowerment, self-confidence, right? Getting a sense of self-worth maybe for the first time in your life.
Exactly.
I have many, many clients like
Yeah,
this that I work. In fact,
yeah,
these are the clients that pretty much only work with
yeah.
now, or these kinds of folks.
I think it's really important to point out that that is a bit beyond probably what other practitioners in hypnotherapy offer. They maybe look at you, find out in their intake questionnaire what is your main goal, your main thing, then create the right setting for you, and then run a script that they have created and run you through to actually help you to change. That is sort of the probably part of, or a big part of many practitioners' work. kind of a
Yeah.
recipe approach, so to speak.
Yeah.
And the what you're doing is far more inquisitive, curious work with the patient. It's far more adapting to the responses. It's far more back and forth compared
Yes.
with maybe other practitioners. Would that be fair to say?
It's very fair to say, and it's by design. I can imagine how boring it would be to just be reading people's scripts all day. And to me, to really do someone the best service,
Yeah.
I need to follow where that brain is going.
Yeah.
And they don't know where that subconscious, mind is going to take them. I don't know where it's going to go, but wherever it goes, I need to have, some ammunition to be able to,
Nice.
help them deal with where it goes and what it does. And so I love the tough cases, the ones that are dealing with deep core issues, the ones that other practitioners haven't been able to really deal with very well. And I'll get people come in and tell me that I've had 12 rejections already from other practitioners, that other hypnotherapists that won't work with me. And I'm like,
Mm.
okay, well then I have to work with you because someone's got to, and you need to get past this. So let's get started. Um, so yeah, I mean, there's a lot. If a lot of people have a really hard time with other people, having some evidence of traumatic moments is sitting right there in front of them.
Mm.
Uh, I remember one day I had 3 sessions, and I was going to an office. Now I have my office at my home, but um, I was so tired at the end of the day that the 45-minute drive home, I was yawning the entire way
Mm.
because I had two
Mm.
sessions where women were reviewing rapes in my office, and then the third session was a serial child molester, and we were dealing with his stuff. So that's some rough stuff. And I used to be a police officer for like 5 minutes back, 20 years ago. So my cop face comes down. As soon as I hear stuff like that, it's like, someone's like, well, I have a porn addiction. Okay, no problem. It's probably like a 3 session fix. And he's like, well, it's kiddie porn. And 20 years ago, I molested some kids. And then I feel like, okay, I need to go out in the hallway and just like banshee scream for a minute. And then I'll
Yeah.
regroup and come up with a better plan and then come back in and, we can talk about this. Um,
Beautiful.
Someone
Beautiful.
that has trouble sleeping, it turns out that he's tearing his skin off in his sleep because when he looks in the mirror, he sees a demon who shouldn't be allowed to live. Like that kind of stuff doesn't come out in the consultation. It comes out like 3 sessions in, right? And then it's like, okay, what the hell do I do with this, right? Like,
Exactly.
like, okay, okay,
Exactly.
let me think. Okay, so we're dealing with a habit.
Yeah.
So let's just simplify this and then, take it one step at a time and see what I can do for this guy, So,
Do you have a speed dial
yeah,
with the
so
Catholic Church for an exorcist or?
right, right. I know. I wish this is not voodoo. I wish it was. I could retire early, but no. So, yeah. But no, I really do like the more. I really like the stuff. This is the stuff that gives me the sense of purpose in my business when I'm helping people. This is the
Mm,
stuff that really changed people's lives completely. And
exactly.
there is like no more rewarding way to make a living in my mind than to do that.
Mm,
But I understand that it's really difficult for some people to sit and work with those kinds of
mm,
situations, especially if they have, some of that in their past and maybe they're being triggered by their clients. That can happen sometimes. And so the people that I train, I work with them or give them the option of working with me regularly to keep them from if they notice they're being triggered by
mm,
anything. Okay, let's clean this up with you because you need to anyway, and let's clean it up so that you're no longer being triggered by your clients, and you can be because you can't be going down in the hole with them, the rabbit hole. You need to be able to reach down in and pull them out by the ears if necessary, but you need to remain steady on the ground above to help them.
mm.
So, so
Who
yeah, I
healed?
understand why a lot of practitioners just want to read scripts because it's
Absolutely.
it's emotionally easier for the practitioner, and it's not like that doesn't get any results. That's a very good thing. Like you can do a
Mm,
lot of really good work that way.
mm,
It's just different, a different kind
mm,
of work, and I tend to like the deeper stuff.
mm. I think that raises the question, who heals the healer? Because we have got, if we assume, not assume, if we just look at the studies and we say, okay, 1 in 4 women in the United States will be raped or have sexual abuse in their lifetime, then this is a hell of a lot of baggage that those women carry. And they often then try to help others, they maybe go onto a path to be there for others, but they have not dealt with the underlying problems
Yeah.
and in themselves. So that makes that very, very, very hard. And
That's
it is a big challenge. I mean, that's our post-traumatic growth. That's the opportunity that we have when we have gone through a lifetime of shit. That we either remain that victim or that we turn into a survivor and subsequently, hopefully, into a thriver. That you actually take actions and constantly learn and constantly improve yourself. But with that, I think that the biggest challenge and the most rewards come from emotional intelligence. And that's what you're pointing towards. But
yeah.
instead of actually maybe only using talk therapy, psychotherapy, it will get you somewhere, but it probably will take you 10 years. Whilst hypnotherapy might actually be able to bypass things and will be far more effective.
That
So,
does tend to be the case. And
yeah.
and it tends to be emotionally easier as well.
Hmm.
Because if I'm helping you with a bad feeling that you're having a hard time getting away from,
Yeah.
and I say, okay, give it a form or a shape and take it out of your body and put it out in front of you at a comfortable distance away, and then describe it to me. And they
Hmm.
say, oh, it's a ball of string. Okay,
Hmm.
so give that, what does that ball of string need to feel better? Well, it needs love. Okay, give love to that ball of string out there, and then give that same love to yourself. And
Yeah.
for some reason, it can be so difficult to give ourselves love.
Ah.
But and your brain has no problem giving it to a ball of string, imaginary, out in front of you. No problem with that at all. So, we can use tricks like that, these little brain hacks,
Yeah.
just to make it easier for us to do the kind of work that we need to do, that
Yeah.
get that brain, to do that reprogramming, where it's very difficult if you're stuck in this kind of self-referential mode, and trying to control the things that are going on in that mode. If you have somebody else, it's like having you do some weird stuff that is actually fun. Something that we do having to do with getting rid of a fight or flight from trauma is actually
Yeah.
one of the most fun experiences you can have with hypnotherapy. And it seems like it would not be, because it's dealing with trauma. And when I say, okay, when you think about this traumatic event, you feel it in your body. Yeah. Okay. Can you see it playing as a little movie in front of you? Yeah, but I don't like it. That's okay. That's okay. Let it go. We're going to come back to it, but in a different way. And when you're in that hypnotic state and you go to that same event, it's not as big a deal.
Hmm.
You don't feel as threatened, and you see more detail, and you feel more accurate feelings that way. And then I say, okay, well, let's do this with it and do that with it, and you're messing around with it, and we're using kind of like therapeutic dissociation, if you will, right? So that you're no longer sitting in the theater seat watching the movie of this event. You're now up in the projection room watching your body sitting in the
Hmm.
theater seat, and that's the you that's watching the movie. You're not watching it. You're just watching the back of your head, right? And then and it's going backwards. It's in black and white. There's no sound, right? So all of these things to make it more emotionally distant.
Hmm.
And then when you go through and you do, and then I make a funny noise to run things backwards and everything, and people will laugh and everything. And then at the end of it, okay, so try to bring that body response back. Can you do that? No. And this is after, maybe 20 minutes.
Hmm.
And so, and now you can actually have sessions where you don't know what the session is. I've had a couple of those, and they've both been younger people that have had the first one was someone who couldn't go back to school, and a teenage girl, and I said, "Can you tell me what happened?" Her mother brought her in. I said, "Can you tell me what happened?" And she said, "No." And I said, "That's okay. Can you see a little part of it as a little movie clip that's playing in front of you?" She said, "Yeah." And I said, "Okay, here's what I want you to do." And I just walked her through this little brain hack of a process to get rid of that fight or flight feeling. And 15 minutes later, she couldn't feel that feeling anymore. And she could go back to school the next day. So it can be, I have no idea what that session was about. No clue, but I don't need to, because I'm not doing the changing. The client is, and
Right.
I'm just kind of holding the scaffolding up there so that that brain can do what it needs to do. Yeah.
Ah, interesting. Interesting. I think there's so much that we can learn. And let's still be clear, even with all the new understanding of neuroplasticity, with the new understandings how our mind works, how emotions work, etc., we are still only scratching the surface. We have
Sure.
no clue what this black box up there really does. But we are learning more and more techniques that can be incredibly powerful to empower patients to behave in a more positive way for themselves, to reduce the impact, emotional impact of fear, of negative emotions that we otherwise would try to escape from. It's one thing to learn radical compassion or self-compassion techniques, to actually be able to sit with your fear, to accept it for what it is, interrogate it, and then nurture yourself to get over that wave of neurochemicals. So that's one thing. But what we are doing is we are actually uncoupling the negative emotions from their physiological response. I think that's so
We're getting rid of the
powerful.
self-referent part.
Yeah.
So it's no longer, and one of the things that's I think fascinating that I've noticed over the years is that when we're taking some kind of a very scary, traumatic kind of situation and reprogramming that, when that person gets rid of that physical response,
Mm,
the visual mental movie changes perspective. It goes from first person to third person perspective. They're
mm,
no longer that self-referent component is no longer there. And they're no longer seeing that mental movie from their perspective in that situation. Instead, they're looking at it from third person and it could be anybody. It doesn't necessarily feel like them. It's just like, okay, well,
mm.
it just happened. It doesn't matter. They
Beautiful.
don't have that emotional component goes away with that self-referential
Mm.
uh, when that self-referential tie is cut, if you will.
Beautiful. 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 You're an amazing woman, Amy. You have really explored the mind in such a way, and I love your passion. I love your the way that things that other people run away from a mile, the difficult things that they entice you, and that you've learned to embrace that. But also, I love the way that you admitted to your own response to the things that you expose yourself to. And when I say things, the patients, the clients, their their sore topics that trigger a response in you. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with those days? And
Yeah, so
also,
I don't really get triggered emotionally by things, although if somebody I can be surprised for sure. I've been surprised many times at the depth of someone's, problem that they're coming in with and think, well, oh man, like that I didn't even know that could happen to a person, and how do I handle that? And they didn't teach us that in school, right? I have no clue. But it's just a matter of, staying grounded and
Mhm,
keeping everything simple. So even when I get something that makes me want to go out in the hallway and banshee scream, I will just like, okay, breathe and just keep it simple.
mhm,
This is the same kind of simple process that any other lesser or less emotional kind of programming would be. It's the same thing. It's just a heavier content,
mhm,
but it's the same structure in the brain that we're dealing
mhm,
with. It's the
mhm.
same reprocessing or reprogramming that we're doing, rewriting that story. It's the mechanism is the same.
You're
So it
referring
doesn't
to how
matter.
to deal with a challenging patient, but I'm
Yeah.
talking how do you deal with the challenged healer with
So
you?
as a healer, this is
Mm.
yeah. So this is what I tell myself
All right,
as
see.
as a healer when I'm having a situation like that, it's like, okay, just keep it simple. It's the same thing as something that, like a fear of dinosaurs, which was actually a thing that came into my office one time. And it was a big deal because there's a big dinosaur on the side of the road and she almost like crashed the car full of her friends because she was so scared. Yeah. So yeah, that's a one session fix. But that I laugh about. It would definitely not trigger me. But if you get that same kind of fear with something that is triggering or something that really really hits you in the heart, is something, oh my gosh, like that, I couldn't imagine being in that situation like that. That's just a really horrendous thing to have to deal with. You have to be able to kind of push that aside, push the emotional part of it aside.
Mm.
Don't empathize with your client, but have compassion and sympathy and stay that steady rock for them so that you can provide your strength and your, direction through a process to
Mm.
help them get where they want to go. And so by just keeping myself thinking about this is keep it simple. This is the same kind of mechanism that I deal with everything else. It's just a different content. And that way I can kind of step away from it emotionally a little bit and still see where that client, needs to go, what I need to do to help that client get there.
Nice.
And that allows me to stay, up on the ground to pull them out of that hole if necessary.
Beautiful. Wow. Nowadays, you are out there and teaching the teachers. You're focusing on spreading the word. You have written your book. Tell us more. Where can people find the book?
So the book is called Reconstructing Reality, Outsmarting the Brain to Rewrite Our Life Stories. And it is on Amazon. And it's an award winner and a number one bestseller. It still pops into number one spot in three categories every so often. So it's really great. It's made for anybody to be able to read and understand. It's pretty short. It's an easy read, but it's a lot of information that people don't realize about
Mm.
hypnotherapy and these other subconscious kind of techniques that we can use. And it's made to just it's a theoretical book, and it's made to kind of open people's eyes to giving hypnotherapy a seat at the table along
Mm.
with medication and psychotherapy as possible interventions to help them get past issues that they're having. And so a lot of the benefits of doing that are in there, how it differs from the other approaches that's in there,
Mm.
what's going on in the brain in terms of neuroplasticity as you're in a session working on this.
Mm.
And then the only real complaints I got about the book were that there weren't a lot of exercises that people could do to make these changes on their own. And so I just recently published a workbook, a Reconstructing Reality workbook. And so it's a series of two books now. So you can get both of them. And the workbook is just, there's information and there are a bunch of exercises. And so it's a fun workbook. You can complete, the exercises right there in the book and everything. So
Oh,
if you want
beautiful.
more of a hands-on experience, there's the workbook as well.
Amazing. And the where can people find you if they want to work with you, if they want to learn more about you?
So you can find me online, most social media platforms, and amyrosner.com. And you can I do free consultations. I don't take a lot of new clients these days, but I do have a group of people working with me, associate practitioners who I have helped train that I know are really good, and it may be better than I would be for what you have going on. So I'm
Mm.
always happy to talk to anybody about anything they have going on, and then try to help them find the right solution for them.
That's beautiful. Guys, look down there into the description of the YouTube video and of the podcast because we have got all the links for Amy down there. Amy, thank you so much for being a guest on my show. You have beautifully outlined the power of hypnotherapy in its way to bring out the best in us and to deal maybe with those coping mechanisms, belief systems, and whatever else is rummaging around in our subconscious that is holding us back. Because there is so much. There is so much. Maybe there are so many misconceptions around hypnotherapy, and hopefully we were able to dispel some of the myths and actually point out the value that this approach has. It's what really impacts me most, or what I find so wonderful is the speed with which those techniques can affect change. We so
Yeah,
often
and that's because it's working with the brain's natural process, the reconstructive
exactly,
process. Yeah,
exactly. That's
so it's
beautiful.
very fast and very easy.
Hmm,
Yeah.
isn't it? Amy, thank you so much for being a guest on my show. It was an honor and privilege.
Oh, my honor. Thank you so much, Stefan. I really
That's it.
appreciate it. It was a
Cool.
joy to talk to you.
And you guys out there, look after yourself and live with intention. Bye.